Good evening. You're on the smoking section, and tonight we have a partner in crime who is a strong advocate for smokers' rights, I believe. Is that correct, Paul? Are you an advocate for smokers' rights?
A whole view of things that would encompass that, yeah. A whole view of the world that's favorable to that.
Right. Now, let me ask you, for example, the state of California had a ballot question which they put before the voters.
Yeah.
And they said, do you want to raise taxes on cigarettes by $2?
Yeah.
To the state sales tax, which I believe is not terribly high. I mean, it's not as high, certainly, as Massachusetts or New York. And the voters themselves, I don't know if it was overwhelmingly or simply by a majority, voted to raise taxes on their fellow citizens who smoked. From your worldview, what do you think of that?
Well, I think they're, you know how I feel about escalating taxes on smoking. They're impoverishing people who smoke, and it just becomes more of an expense and more of a hardship. They're not going to quit. It's too deeply entrenched. I mean, if 50 years of war on smoking hasn't gotten us at least to the point where no intelligent person will be caught dead smoking a cigarette.
Well, that's true.
Then they ought to just desist.
Well, I mean, to me, this was a very disappointing thing because this was not the legislature.
It is. It's disappointing to me too. I like to hear, and I have heard recently, instances where people have, at least it's been put on the ballot to allow smoking in bars once again.
Yeah.
Which I hope to see again in my lifetime.
I do also. But what is your view? Why do you think the California voters voted in this way?
I don't understand Californians, I guess, but there are, the so-called, the narrative has been dominated exclusively by people who believe that smoking causes premature death, and that's its primary function.
Right.
It's a product. If you use it correctly, it will kill you. And they've had the microphone all to themselves. There hasn't been a chance for a rebuttal.
And so you're saying that the California citizenry has been evidently convinced of this?
Apparently so.
Do you think it could possibly simply be selfish reasons? Because, I mean, the more you tax, let's say, the more you tax smokers, the less pressure there will be to tax other people.
Sure. There's always scapegoating. I mean, if smoking is particularly unpopular in California, then that could be a good instance of scapegoating and shifting the burden to
shifting the tax burden
and for once I do feel like emphasizing that the poor tend to smoke more, so shifting the burden to the poor.
Right, and the same thing here has happened in New York and happened in Massachusetts.
Yeah,
where the taxes are very high, and I don't think. I mean, there's some people that say taxes are essentially people on the right. Many people on the right, at least, say that taxes are basically to pay the government's bills, and that they should not be used to modify the behavior of people.
Well, I'm very much against social engineering. And it's much more interesting to let people do what they want. And, people are the foundation of a nation and the foundation of a culture. And the culture has not rejected smoking to the extent where these things are required.
Well, I mean, for example, Bernie Sanders, when asked if he was in favor of a soda tax, said no because that would be unfair to lower income people, whereas when queried about a tobacco tax, said he was all for it.
It's an orthodoxy, and it has to go. And I think with the new administration, I think we have a good chance to, make our point.
And what is that point?
Let's end the war on smoking.
Aha.
Yeah,
Really?
Let's just drop it. It's not worth it. It's just hassling people.
Well, I mean, I think that's an excellent way to look at it. Let's end the war on smoking. Like some people are saying, let's stop stigmatizing people who are addicted to opioids.
Yeah.
But I haven't heard anybody in the that category of person who said, well, let's also give smokers a break.
I've heard quite a bit of that actually among people I've worked with, people I've associated with, but they're not of the ruling elite.
The ruling elite,
and they don't
yes.
identify with the ruling elite. And we know that the ruling elite was a little overconfident this November.
The war, this okay.
More than a little.
Yeah.
Overconfident. And I think it really demands a lot of things need to be reassessed. The actual reality of what's going on the ground in America. They had it all wrong. They said Trump could never win, for example.
Right. But okay.
And even if he had lost, I mean, his supporters would still be out there. And what do you want to do then? Liquidate them?
Well, I mean, you could say the same thing, for Hillary supporters. They're still out there in very large numbers.
Right, and a lot of them are talking about getting guns.
Come on.
No.
Okay,
Paul Schrader.
I believe you.
It's
I
the actor Michael Shannon has.
I hadn't heard that, but be that as it may, I mean, I think in terms of this election, it's not as if, I mean, the country is very divided, and it's going to remain divided, I think, for the near future anyway.
It would help if people started talking to rather than about each other.
Yes, I think that's a good point.
And if people would start to credit their own observations rather than relying on the mainstream media.
Now, on our Facebook page, we recently posted a very interesting article that came from Yahoo News, and it went directly to what people might expect from the Donald Trump administration vis-a-vis smoking. And it talked a little bit about Obama, who has been a very, has appointed some very anti-smoking people to very high levels in the government, and has been very prominent in signing new taxes into law. And
new taxes.
Well, I mean,
and that's not my only beef with him either.
Well, right. I'm sure, but he certainly seemed very happy to slap smokers with very high taxes.
Right. I think that's run its course. There are signs that this is running its course. I talk to a lot of ordinary people, and they find it silly. A total war on smoking is just silly. It's based on the same principle as prohibition and the drug war, which have never worked. In fact, repression of any kind has never worked. Produces the opposite effect of what's intended.
Now, according to this article, the only evidence that they have I mean, some people talk about Obama as if he is still smoking, but I think it's very unlikely because the only evidence that I have seen proffered in this regard is in this article that he was photographed in Germany holding something that looks suspiciously like a package of cigarettes. Do you think Barack Obama has been sneaking smokes in the White House?
I have no idea.
No, you haven't seen any speculation on this?
I have no idea, but I mean, if he has, that's par for the course in politics. Nobody's straightforward. Nobody's like FDR.
No, like FDR, he was straight.
Right.
Oh, about smoking.
Politicians, every word out of their mouth is mediated. It's written by somebody else. Their body language, it's all choreographed.
Right.
One thing I wanted to bring up.
Yes.
Getting back to the culture.
The culture of the United States?
Regarding smoking. The Hollywood so-called liberal elite.
Yes.
Are very anti-Trump.
That's for sure.
But they sure haven't promoted the anti-smoking agenda in movies.
Aside from Rob Reiner, for example.
Yeah, but
he's been very, very.
Yeah, but
prominent.
he's not typical.
Oh, okay.
There are more actors and actresses that smoke in their movies, really gratuitously by, say, like Stanton Glance's standards.
Right.
I could rattle off a list.
Unfortunately, they did not seem to weigh in against the tax. I don't, to my knowledge, I didn't follow the ballot initiative. I didn't follow it very much. But
Yeah.
they didn't seem to say, "Hey guys,
that
maybe
reminds me of
taxing our fellow citizens is not." A good form of tax policy.
That could be a bad form of elitism. There's good elitism and bad. But like for the new class or ruling class, I know of examples of really anti-gun zealots who actually own guns for their own protection.
Right.
And with the election and Trump, they're talking about going into the woods and like.
Well, I haven't seen any of this, but
I've heard people talk.
I don't think, I think anytime there is an election, you get all kinds of people who are very disappointed on one side and, probably overly disappointed on one side.
But what I was getting.
And overly elated on the other side. So I think the public will probably be reading a little bit too much into this. Either the pro-Trump people will think, wow, now, this is going to happen, and the anti-Trump people will say, oh my gosh. I think it's going to settle down. I think it's already settling down a little.
Just about every day on Facebook, I post something to the effect that neither side has won or lost everything.
That's for sure. That's for sure.
But to get back to the culture, I did just hear about a movie, an anti-smoking movie that's come out. It's called A Billion Lives.
Right.
And the concept is that people go on smoking, 1 billion lives will be lost prematurely within the next 100 years.
To my knowledge, that movie was produced by vaping enthusiasts.
Is that right?
Yes. And I could be wrong. As we all know, there's a first time for everything.
Yeah.
But that movie, to my knowledge, is vaping enthusiasts talking about if we could only get everyone to vape, how many people would be saved from the horrors of tobacco.
All right. Let me just say this. On Facebook, I've gotten back in touch with a lot of people I went to school with, the majority of whom started smoking early in life, and they're all there. So where is this scourge? What does it mean to save 1 billion lives? I mean, we all die.
Right. So in other words, what it means, it means basically that they will have a few years more to live than if they didn't smoke, basically.
Right. And it's the concept that life is to be conserved rather than spent.
Rather than lived.
Right. I don't think you'd find too many really intellectual people who are excited about the anti-smoking movement.
Okay.
But really respected thinkers. I mean,
can you name any really respected thinkers in the United States at this time? I mean, I know I'm putting you on the spot. I'm putting you on the
David
spot.
Mamet.
David Mamet, okay. Mm-hmm.
That's. I would say he's probably not down with it, with the cause.
Yeah, right. He's one of the few producers in Hollywood or directors who is probably a little bit to the right, if you don't mind me saying that.
The late Edward Abbey, father of of Earth First, actually, smoked cigars, and incidentally made fun of liberals.
And well, okay, so this article in Yahoo is pretty good because evidently Mike Pence, who is our now he is our vice president elect.
Yeah.
Said on his website in the year 2000, which is 16 years ago, quote, "Time for a quick reality check. Despite the hysteria from the political class and the media, smoking doesn't kill."
That's awesome.
2 of every 3 smokers does not die from a smoking-related illness.
No one would have dared say that 10 years ago.
But he said this 16 years ago.
Oh, he did?
Yes.
Well, that's too bad.
Yeah, it takes it. But, I mean, it's an important point because, you know, well, first of all, 90% of non-smokers die from smoking-related illnesses.
Right. In other words, there are no diseases that only smokers get.
Right, right. I mean, you know, all of these people who are dying, who've never smoked a cigarette in their lives, are dying from cancer, heart disease, or stroke. Mm-hmm. And these are, you know, smoking-related illnesses.
Right. And let me see, what was I going to say? And now the deck is stacked because, like any death that can be tied in with smoking, is written down, recorded as a smoking death.
If you die and you smoked,
that's a smoking
regardless of what age you die at, you could die at 105.
Yeah.
And you're going to die from heart disease, stroke, or cancer, and all those diseases are smoking related. And if you smoked, therefore, you know, it's caused by smoking.
Yeah.
In the eye of the anti-smoking propagandists. Mm-hmm. Now, do you think President Obama could have been perhaps a better smoker? I mean, excuse me, we could have been a better smoker if he wasn't president, or a better president if he had continued smoking?
I think if he had continued smoking openly, that would have been a big point in his favor.
But do you think if he used tobacco,
he'd be a different sort of person if he did that, a different sort of leader.
But let's say he didn't smoke openly. Let's say he kind of used snus like I do when I can't smoke, and then smoked a lot. Do you think he would have been a more, you know, one thing about President Obama that even his strongest supporters acknowledge is they say he wasn't good at bipartisanship. I mean, not, you know, he wasn't good at reaching out and getting other people to cooperate with him in the government.
Yeah, I don't think it would have. I really don't think it would have made much difference.
Well, I mean, Arnold Schwarzenegger, for example, when he was the governor of California, you know, he wasn't allowed to smoke in the state house by state law. So he built a tent outside.
Yeah.
And when he had important people coming, and he wanted to have kind of powwows, you know, like the Indians did.
Yeah.
He would have everyone have good cigars, and he got a lot done.
Well, yeah, that's what I'm saying. He did it openly, and everyone knew that he was doing that. He didn't try to conceal it. If you're trying to conceal a habit, I think that's a hindrance, in fact.
Well, you know, Donald Trump has said that he is going to dismantle 70% of the regulatory state. So I think he said that. Now, that would mean that that we might see, you know, let's say, according to this article, he might dismantle the FDA's Office on Smoking and Health and the CDC's Office on Smoking and Health. So we might see a big change there.
There's certainly no reason to continue to be gloomy or think that the anti-smoking movement is gaining any more traction than it already has. I think it's gotten as much power as it ever will because they don't have any more shock and awe information
they certainly don't have
to release that would be credible, you know.
Well, you know, Paul, just to take a break, because you've really been cogitating quite strongly this evening. You know Gene Hush, my pal Gene Hush?
No.
You never met Gene?
I bet I would know him if I saw him.
Well, you know, Gene, I want to give a shout out to Gene.
Okay.
Hi, Gene. And Gene was very kind enough. Every once in a while, Gene has never smoked, but he's, you know, over the years, he's kind of mellowed in terms of his anti-smoking.
Right.
And as a matter of fact, we recently took a very nice hike in Lincoln. Beautiful, beautiful place.
Yeah.
Beautiful place to hike. We saw alpaca and all kinds of wonderful creatures. And
That's alpaca.
alpaca is like a llama. It looks like a, you know what a llama is, right?
Yeah.
I don't know what you call
I didn't know we
it.
had something like a llama indigenous.
Well, I don't know if it is indigenous, but it was out in Lincoln. They have a small alpaca farm.
Oh, okay.
And you know,
farm, yeah.
you should talk to Jeff and get him to take you out there. But the reason I bring this up is I was, you know, basically I go fully armed. I have cigarettes with me, and I have my pipe with me, and I have snus.
Yeah.
So I'm ready for just about any contingency, you know.
Yeah.
And as a matter of fact, I won't do my show without snus, by the way.
Really?
No, I won't do my show. Not if I can avoid it. And I won't get up and perform on stage without snus.
Well, the way I like to start my day, and this gets me ready for about anything, do as many push-ups as I can.
Oh, really?
And take a walk. And that's really primarily how I get going.
I mean, don't you have a cigarette before you do that?
But I can't do, the one thing I cannot do without, and I've been deprived of it, and there was no sign of my dependency letting up, even after 10 days, coffee.
And what about a cigarette? Don't you want a cigarette with your morning coffee?
Want, maybe. Yeah, want, but
Do you sometimes go without a cigarette with your morning coffee? I mean, that would be just, I wouldn't want to do that.
I don't like the idea of being habituated to
No,
to things.
no.
No, when I find that that's happening, I try to back away from the thing.
You don't want to be too, what do you call it, predictable?
Too dependent on things that cost money.
Right. Well, fortunately, the air is free, right?
Yep.
The air is free, yes?
And there are also there's other
Well, there's other what? There are other things one can...
there's other stimulants, not necessarily
Yeah.
as legal, that I find effective.
Well, I find that when I have my coffee and my cigarette in the morning early, you know, my whole attitude changes.
Yeah, but you know what? All right, I could say kind of the same thing about marijuana, but I don't, unless someone asks me. I don't really talk about it too much, because it's kind of unfortunate. You know, marijuana is hard for me to do without.
Okay, well, we all have things that are hard to do without. Love. We all need love, right?
Yeah.
Or can we survive without love?
You have to have love in your heart to start with, and marijuana puts the love in my heart.
Oh, does it really?
Yeah, it does.
Love of what?
Of everybody. It makes
Of
me
people.
more genial.
Wow.
It makes me enjoy my own thoughts. I can lay back and listen to myself think for a while.
Yeah. Well,
But see,
Gene, back to Gene Hush.
I don't proselytize.
No? Okay. Back to Gene Hush. So we went on this wonderful walk out there, and Gene said something that was very nice to me. Mm-hmm. I mean, he's a nice guy in general.
Yeah.
I mean, we all have our rough edges, right?
Right.
And he said to me that he enjoyed the smoke from my pipe.
Uh-huh.
And that was very nice.
You know, that's not as uncommon as you might think.
You know, a lot of people like pipe smoke.
That's right.
You know, and there's two kinds of pipe smoke. Did you know there are two kinds of pipe smoke?
My father got into pipe smoking when he quit cigarettes.
Now, did he smoke aromatic tobacco or non-aromatic tobacco?
I think some of it was aromatic.
Because aromatic tobacco...
It smelled different.
Aromatic tobacco is tobacco that's kind of flavored often with cherry and things of that nature. So did it have a very... Was it what do you call it, floral or fragrant?
Occasionally.
You know, and
there again, I'm not an expert on marijuana either.
Right.
You know, I'm not like one of these people that looks at the high times.
Right. Well, I just know that the aroma of tobacco, you know. Anyway, so that was very nice. And Gene sent me this great quotation. You know, I like to collect quotations about tobacco, and this is from a book that's really interesting because Gene is a Civil War buff.
Yeah.
And this book was written in 1915. And it was written by a man named William E. Doster, and it's called Lincoln and Episodes of the Civil War. And Doster himself was a colonel, and evidently a major general named Sickles was hit with a cannonball in the leg. And this is a quotation from the book, and may I read it?
Okay.
A stretcher was brought up, and the wounded man lifted onto it. Despite his pain and shock, Major General Sickles was not one to allow this moment to pass without making full use of its dramatic value. Being informed that a rumor had gone around that he was mortally wounded, he requested a stretcher bearer to remove a cigar from a case in an inside pocket and light it for him. He was carried away with the Havana projecting jauntily from his mouth, a sight that impressed Colonel William Doster as he passed by and making him reflect. This is giving the solace tobacco a new meaning. Mm-hmm. And that's the quotation, and that Gene was,
How did he do? Did he pull through?
I don't know. That's a question that I don't know, and perhaps Gene, we have 30 seconds left if he wants to call us and tell us, but I don't think he's going to make it. Now, Paul, we're down to our last 33 seconds, so any other thoughts that are percolating through your mind?
Well, just that I prefer to see people acting the way they want to act. I think that's a lot more interesting. If I see people smoking freely in nightclubs and stuff,
that's nice.
I feel like I'm in a movie.
Okay, Paul,